I don't want to leave the dais tonight with our teachers feeling that we're not caring, or I'm really considering what's best for you as well. As I said, I love my men and women in black and my fire department, but I also love our teachers who train everyone. Everybody who sits in this room has had a teacher. And it is important to our community. We cannot devalue what our teachers bring, our school, what they bring. And it's not because I am passionate about my life career, but long after I leave this dais, there will be children to be educated, and our responsibility is to a community that's thriving. And if you're thriving in a community, you're thriving with your schools, and you're putting forth, you're putting value in what's important to sustain a community. We hear all the time that there are school systems or there are communities where the young folks or young people leave thriving communities for a better opportunity. We're thriving right now in Spotsylvania. We won't continue to thrive if we don't put the focus on education. And I will leave that as part of my plea. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yep, Mr. McLaughlin.
Real quick, just one thing I want to point out too, so everybody understands, because we've run into this a few times in the past. Whatever the budget is agreed upon on Tuesday and it goes forward, whatever portion goes to the schools, once the county supervisor or the board of supervisors sends that check to the school board, we no longer have any ability to control where that money goes. So whatever is proposed in the budget, they are not obligated to spend it in those areas. Now, we categorized it, but they can spend it how they choose to spend it. Just they're a little squirrely on the pay raises. So just because we want that to happen or we're going to match the state doesn't mean the school system has to spend the money on that. So just keep that in mind. Once we write the check, the board of supervisors loses control. And the fact that we're not even allowed to audit.
First of all, let me just say how sorely disappointed I am that this table is empty and there's no school board members here. As you just said, Mr. Taylor, these decisions are not up to you. And the people that actually make the decisions and you carry them out on behalf of should be sitting out here answering these questions. The fact that they're not, I think, is a, there's many words for it, but I'm going to get past that for now. It's just, it's incredibly frustrating.
We do have some school board members here.
Oh, and I do appreciate them being here. And at some point, perhaps my comments might be better answered by them. But for right now, and thank you, Mr. Frazier. But for right now, let me bring up a couple of issues. You bring up that energy cost and all are going to be, you're budgeting more next year for them. Energy costs this year were more than last year. So how did you pay for this year's cost if they weren't a dire need from the year before? All of a sudden, you have a crystal ball that next year is going to be, the bottom's going to fall out and gas is going to be $19 a gallon. I'm not sure what you're basing it on or what number you're basing it on, but why is that number so steadfast? Whereas in the past, and you know, I've been here for a while too, as you know, that we have gone through these things. We've seen nearly $5 a gallon gas and then it drops back down. So why is that number so hard and fast that we cannot move off of it to make sure and guarantee that our teachers will be paid? And you know what? If we have energy costs that exceed the budget, we will find it somewhere else, regardless of what it is. We will find it somewhere else because teacher salary and pay increases are the top priority regardless.
So what have we done this year?
What's different this year and what is challenging me as a financial manager in the coming years is the fact that not only do we have uncertainties in budget usage and utilities that are hiking up, but we have a reality where our health insurance reserve cost budget is $41 million, and the costs are actually approaching 50 or will surpass $50 million by next year. This is through our work with Anthem. And luckily we do have the reserve, but as everybody knows, the reserve can only be used one time and it has to be refilled. Then we have an enormous amount of overages in special education costs that relate to services that are mandated through IEPs. So when you consider a candle burning at one end, it's manageable, just like you're saying. When you consider a candle that's burning at multiple ends, it creates a higher level of business risk. And it's the combination of those business risks that caused me to tell Mr. Taylor that it is time to budget for operational costs more accurately and rely less on the fact that we can't fill positions for whatever reason. Does that answer your question, Mr. Jakubowski?
Well, yes. No, it does. And basically what you're saying is that you weren't hoping that you didn't fill positions so you can use that money to cover the cost.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
I'm not saying that.
No, and I didn't mean to just shorten that very eloquent explanation down to something so short and simple, but that's just how I heard it. In a recent email, it was stated that there was something about, we ranked 40% for special ed, and I know that there's a lot of special ed concerns I've heard from a lot of people. So how much in your budget that you're asking from us, not the feds and the state, but how much that you're asking from us will go to help special education, bring that up and bring us in compliance? Are we not in compliance in many?
Again, we scored, and I think it was either 41 or 43% on SPED compliance in 2019. That's information reported on the VDOE website, so that's public data. The teasing apart what elements in the budget will actually contribute to assisting us in improvement is very difficult because, first of all, the pay increase would apply also to SPED teachers, and we need that increase to be as high as possible in order to be able to compete with our neighbors, and so that's a fundamental piece. There are also, and I don't have the number of positions in my head, but there are a number of SPED-related positions that would, in our budget, that would be expected to help enhance compliance. And we may have some handy detail here in a moment.
Okay, because the one thing, and speaking for myself, is that I want to make sure that the money, for example, if we were to fund the raises, match the state, that there is a guarantee, and this might be the time to ask. All I see here is my representative. I'm sorry, I can't see anybody else out there. My apologies if any other school board members are out there. But to find, there's one other, and another one, okay. But to ask for as much of a guarantee as you can give, because just like with the sheriff's office and public safety a few years ago, that this board poured a lot of money in there to stop the bleed. We didn't hire new people. We said, we need to bring your salaries up so we don't lose folks. And we need to make sure that we don't lose folks. If we're unable to guarantee that these salary increases happen, I don't know how people will not say, well, they're going to spend it on the lights and making sure that the school buses have gas. I don't want to be here. I want to make sure that this money goes directly to the folks that need it, so that our school system can stop losing folks, and we can also retain a lot of the good people that they keep leaving. They're going to Stafford, they're going to Prince William, and everywhere else.
I hear you, sir, and respectfully, Mr. Jakubowski, I have to say that if the new investment we receive is limited to the $6.84 million to match the state money on the 5% pay increase, we will be continuing to fall behind relative to our neighbors. That if we guaranteed that if we started paying it tomorrow, we will fall behind relative to our neighbors. That's why the number in the proposed budget, which was scrubbed down as hard as we could scrub it, is that 11.28 million. I'm sorry, that is a very hard reality for us, but to the best we can understand in competition with our neighbors, if your support for us is limited to $6.84 million, and assuming that consistent with our organizational values all goes to pay increases, we will still be falling behind. No, our average loaded rate is 75,000.
Okay, so 75,000. So it's still on 175. It's probably what, 14 million, somewhere in that neighborhood. Half of that budget gap is the 175 positions. Correct? If you have 175 positions and just got to do 175 times 75,000.
Right.
It'll probably come out to like 14 million or somewhere in that ballpark.
Except that I think it's a very aggressive assumption to believe that we're not going to be able to fill half of 175 positions.
I didn't say how many you're going to fill, but you didn't fill them all this year. So the assumption is
Again,
that you're not going to fill 175 next year with the nationwide teacher shortage, statewide teacher shortage, and all that. Right.
Respectfully, the folks that have wanted to celebrate my failure as superintendent as an outsider have been happy to report the 160 vacancy figure because it is true in a way if you squint. But the truth is there are, at our last accounting, 20 actually vacant positions in our division. Others are filled with provisionally licensed and long-term subs and other qualified people that the state says are qualified. This is not me making it up.
Yep.
And again, that scrub is not complete, so please don't get a tattoo with that number on your arm. But that is the best we have at present, and it is far lower than critics of the division have been spreading about.